Hello, everyone, and welcome to I was going to say first, but I think it's our second Helm Dev Call of 2021, January 14th. Hope everybody's doing well. We will proceed as usual, which means announcements first and then discussion. So if we look at the notes, which Bridget has kindly put in the chat for those that want to follow in the notes, we have a first announcements, and I think the diligence of Matt Farina definitely deserves that he gets to mention this announcement. So go ahead, Matt.
Oh, thanks. I get more work. All right. This goes. 3.5.0 is out. It was out Wednesday, just like we do on the dates. The next date is set for May 20 something. It's a Wednesday for when 3.6.0 will come out. As our per cadence, the second Wednesday in February will be 3.5.1, unless we have something that causes us to come out quicker. So it's out the door. We can work on new stuff or fixing bugs if you got bugs to fix. There we go.
Was there a blog? I keep saying these things and I don't do them, so I feel bad about it. But was there a blog posted, or we want to do a blog, maybe listing? I appreciated Matt, which you took the time to put in the interesting changes, new flags, and things like that. I thought that was really nice in the release notes.
And I think that would be a great blog post. I just don't have the time to write it. So if somebody else wants to write a blog post, I'd be happy to review it. Since we're only doing these like 3 times a year now, we'll do it 3 times this year, because we're following Kubernetes cadence on the minor releases. That's probably blog worthy.
How about I round up some people and coordinate that?
Sounds great. It's somebody, not me, taking an action. I love it.
I am hoping that at some point I'll have a little more time and volunteer for some of these things. Right now, it's been really busy for me, as many of you, I'm sure. All right, so thank you, Matt, for that, jumping on that, following the schedule. Just want to confirm with you, you haven't created, I think, the items on the schedule. I will take the action to create the items on the schedule. That's the least I can do.
That's something I forgot to do, was actually put it on the calendar. Thank you. That would be great.
I will do that. Yes, other announcements. So something just came up. Helm plugins in Artifact Hub.
This is me. I can talk to it. So earlier this week, the Artifact Hub devs showed me how you can have kubectl plugins, crew plugins listed in Artifact Hub. They showed me this on Tuesday. In fact, if you go look for kubectl plugins, you can find them there. And I said, when I talked to them on Tuesday, what would it take for Helm plugins to be listed there? And on Wednesday, they showed me Helm plugins listed there working. Fantastic job by those folks. And I give a link because the one they tried it out with in the example they did was the Helm 2 to 3 plugin. So in the notes I've shared where you can find that Helm plugin. So if you've got Helm plugins, you can list them and search for them here. We should probably get this into the Helm docs on this stuff. I put it down as a to-do, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. But this is brand new as of this week. Helm plugins can be listed, which I think is pretty cool.
I think that's really awesome. And it says the instructions on how to do it and everything.
If you go in through, you create a thing in Artifact Hub and you go to add something, on the list of things you can add is a Helm plugin. And when you switch to that, it'll ask for the information and point you to the docs for more details. Because they've got docs and everything written for all of this.
From what I can see, Matt, it's basically a docs page because you can't install directly from the Artifacts Hub.
No, you can't install directly from there.
Okay, so it's really a registry.
So the Artifact Hub is more like a search engine than anything else. It doesn't store anything; it just tells you where to get it. So on the 2 to 3 page, if you click on the install button in the top right corner, it'll actually give you the Helm command to install the plugin.
Got it.
And it just points you back to the source, is all it does.
Perfect. So it makes plugins very easy to find. Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right, getting back to the notes. Any other announcements before we move on to the short discussions that we have for today?
Did we have one about still needing a core maintainer to talk for KubeCon EU, or did we get a core maintainer to do a talk for KubeCon EU?
I said I would sort that out. I have not sorted it out yet, but have they given us a date by which we have to sort it out? Because I haven't seen an email about it yet. What with
They
Nancy leaving?
did send an email about it. I'll see if I can dig it up while things are going on here.
Okay. If you want to forward that to me, I will handle it. Thank you.
All right. Anything else for announcements? Okay. All right. So discussions. We have one item, Dependabot recommendations. I think a bunch of them came in today. Bridget, you had the foresight of putting that on.
I noticed that because not only did a few come in today, but also there was an older one for Containerd where someone actually commented and said that 6 days ago they said, oh, there's a bug that this fixes. And I thought, interesting. If we're talking about what goes into 3.5.1, maybe fixing bugs that have come up unexpectedly is something, or maybe not. Maybe that's for 3.6. So yeah, I see Farina is unmuted. What are your thoughts about us handling these various Dependabot recommendations, Farina?
So I think it comes down to the Dependabot ones. And I find that there's kind of like 3 classes of them, right? There's like 3 of them, and just 3 for Kubernetes, even though we use like 5 of the packages. So I think it's funny. But we shouldn't do the Kubernetes Dependabot ones through Dependabot, because then you're going and updating each of them and you get this weird thing as it goes to upgrade. And then you've got all these builds with multiple versions of Kubernetes in them. Things get weird, right? And so what I've been doing with those is when I see them, I just do a pull request that bumps all the Kubernetes dependency in one of my own, and then I close those. But it tells me when to do it, which I absolutely love. And if somebody else wants to go do that instead of me, that would be great. Like 0.20.1 to 0.20.2, that's a pretty simple one. And that's one that could be cherry picked into 3.5.1.
So if that passes the test suite, then we think it's probably fine. Hashtag probably fine. Like how
No,
are
we
you
shouldn't
determining
do
that?
the Dependabot ones for Kubernetes. We should create a brand new pull request
Yeah.
that updates them all. And then if it passes tests, then I'm not worried about it, because they're usually such minor things. We should look at them just to make sure, but they're typically so minor that it's not a big deal. They're not breaking APIs here. They're just fixing bugs. Then there are the ones like Containerd. And Containerd is a tough one here, because Helm doesn't go for Containerd directly. That's because of ORAS. So this is a transitive dependency that we're being told to update. Now, Containerd and those actually have CVEs in them. They're just not CVEs that impact Helm. They're CVEs that impact its container usage, right? So it gets really weird here. So what we really want is ORAS to update their use of Containerd, then we update our use of ORAS, right? That's what we'd ideally like, just to make sure the whole chain of thing continues to work, especially since Containerd bumped a minor version. That would be the ideal situation. And the reason that I haven't gone and like merged that and we've punted on it, because if ORAS says, I want that other one, remember, it always rounds down. So or the minimum version, sorry, it goes to the minimum version. And so if ORAS isn't tested with this and worked out, I just want to make sure. Things are weird sometimes and go. So that would be the ideal situation. And we've been waiting on ORAS to update. And I don't even know what's going on. We need that thing in better shape, ORAS, quite frankly. Jay's Labs. We need that thing in better shape if we're going to keep using it. Maybe it's one of those things that should go to the OCI, but that's for us anyway. Then there's this other one, Testify, which is a testing library. Yeah, that can probably be merged in pretty easy. It was updated 11 hours ago. Yeah, that's one we'd have to look at to see whether, because it's a minor release, not a patch release, if it's something that should go into 3.5.1 or not. Somebody should just look at it, but that one should be pretty easy to merge. So I think there's just different situations depending on what's coming in.
So for my learning, when you do a patch like that, you're saying it's simple. So you accept the Dependabot one for Testify, and then you figure out if you should go into 3.5.1, and then you mark it as needs pick, or you actually do it.
I mark it as needs pick, because it's usually picked when somebody goes and does that work. Now, if you actually want to pick it and mark it as picked, that would be fantastic, because that makes life a whole lot easier. As long as you push it, it makes life a whole lot easier when it's finally time to got the next release.
Yeah, that's the thing. So we've discussed this before when you showed me how to do a release, and I plan on bringing this up when I have a little more time, but I think that's great. Okay.
So that's my view on it. Maybe after this, we should, since we've got time, talk about when we pick things for patches.
Great.
But yeah, so that's at least my view on how I've been handling these different depend-about ones. If anybody else has any other ideas or think we should do something different, please speak up.
Anybody? I can speak for myself. I think what Bridget hinted to it is, how do you feel confident that it's safe? And I guess, Matt, you're saying the automated tests for minor things like that should be enough.
And how do I feel it's safe? It kind of depends. So that's the reason I haven't done Containerd, because I don't know that it's safe, because it's a transitive dependency. For Testify, I would actually go look to see what the minor release did in order to kind of deem whether it's safe or not, because it's a minor release. If we're just a patch release, that would be bug fixes, I'd probably still look at it, but I'd be less likely to be concerned about merging it in. I expect Testify is more than likely a 3.6.0 update and not going to go into 3.5.1. And as far as the Kubernetes patch releases, I look at them, but generally, since it's our Kubernetes 120 support is in 3.5, those just generally automatically get pulled on. And when 121 comes out, that's the work that we'll see. That's where the split will happen and where it goes into 3.6.
All right, and that's where it becomes tricky. Okay. Any other questions on the depend upon topic? All right. Just to be nice for like our people that don't come all the time, if you have topics, add them in the notes, mention it. If not, we'll move on to a new item that Matt just suggested, which is when to do picks for patches.
All right. So I'll just lay out the current situation. The current situation is we normally, if something goes into a release like 3.5.1 on a patch, we'll mark it as being in that release. And then when it gets merged, it's merged. And then when the release manager comes around and says, "Ooh, we need to make this release," we go through and I'll go mark a bunch of them as needs pick. A lot of times they're not marked before that as needs pick. Then I'll go pick them all and I mark them as picked as I pick them. And then I push it up and then I cut the release, usually within that same couple-hour window. That's the current way of doing it, and it doesn't give us a long time of them sitting on the branch or folks testing them. They're just kind of pulled into the patch release. We cut it and off to the races again. That works pretty well with something like a 3.5.1 or a 3.5.2. Some of them where we've gotten out into 4s and 5s, which I don't expect to have often anymore. It's become more difficult as master branch has may have gotten different from the patch release branch or the release branch, and that's when things become more difficult. Ideally, I'd like to see it where if it gets merged, then whoever merged it marks it as needs pick and maybe picks it and pushes it up to that release branch, just so that way it sits there, it's gone through testing, it's been there longer, and it's pulled in more often. That would be kind of cool, and it would make the job of releasing a patch release quicker.
Yeah, I haven't done any patch release. I've watched one, but in releases I've done for other projects, we never did picks like that. They were done on the spot. So if you accept something in master, you would suggest to the contributor, can you also post a PR for the branch, or you might decide to do it yourself. That's something that the project can decide. I really like your point, Matt, about the fact that it sits on the branch, so we can soak it a little bit longer. And doing the release, we'd reach a point where you take the branch, the day of the release, you take the 3.5.1 branch, for example, and it's ready already. So we could even consider automating the release. All the steps could be some make release and then just quick verification. You wouldn't have to do any manual picks, no merge conflicts, risks. So I think there's potential to improve the release process significantly by doing that. I don't know if the other Matt has an opinion. You've done releases before.
No, that sounds fine to me. I'm trying to remember if there was any reason what the reason was why we did the needs pick thing in the first place, because it seems like a more sensible way of doing it then. And it might have just been because in the past we didn't plan on patch releases, so they were usually kind of last minute, not last minute, but like, okay, we should do a patch release. Now we need to go back through all the things that were merged and see which ones need to be picked, as opposed to the current way of doing things where we say, okay, we're pretty sure there's going to be at least one more patch release on this minor, so we will pick onto that branch. So I like this idea.
Would that well, would it help to have a process HIP just to mention that, or can we agree on I guess to document it?
That way we can tell every maintainer, go read this HIP.
I mean, it's a relatively low impact with, I think, higher benefits, so it wouldn't be that hard. And you know, you imagine when you accept a contribution, it's fresh in your mind. Picking it right away is a lot easier than doing it 2 months later or a month later with our new schedule there. But
yeah, sounds great to me.
Okay, I'm willing to do the HIP. I don't mind. I have 2 open and I've been slow on one of them, so I feel bad about that. So if somebody else wants to do it, feel free, but I'm trying to do the things that I can do to help the project. So I'm willing to do it if nobody else wants it.
I think since you've got it in your head, I would ask you to write it up, because I'd probably bug you and make you look at it if I did it. So
that's fine. That's good. Do my best to do it soon.
Sweet.
Right. Any other comments on this change of process? All right. We have 12 minutes left and no more items. So it's a free-for-all. First one to speak gets to get the floor.
So why don't we try to answer Bridget's question on a moderator, notes, and triage for the upcoming week?
Oh, I forgot. Thank you. Yes.
I think I can do triage this week.
I can do moderator. And then we got 3 people. All right.
Thank you, Karina, for notes. So back to the floor is open. Trying to be lively as Martin is. Any news from Martin? No news from Martin?
I believe he was on holiday up through the first week or 2 of January. I didn't expect to see him back until January. So
maybe he decided just not to come back.
No.
I would love to I can't wait till I hit that phase of life.
Retirement?
No. I look forward to that. Yeah.
You're not going to do
what I want to do.
Side computer projects?
Yeah.
I wish they're going to bring you back to Helm.
On the plugin thing with Artifact Hub, so currently if you do a Helm search hub, you can search the Artifact Hub. At what point do you think it makes sense to should we try and spec out what that might look like if we wanted to do Helm plugin search or something like that, as a way of adding support for searching for plugins in the
I like it. So Artifact Hub has an API for everything. So all this stuff's API driven, and you could totally write an external tool for this. In fact, other people have written external tools. And I'll tell you this, there's a tool, is it tied to Harbor or something else? We were trying to figure out when we moved the Helm Hub to the Artifact Hub, they go, oh my gosh, we're getting DOSed all the time from all these public clouds, because we're all these tools hitting Artifact Hub's Helm Hub's API to query information constantly. We literally, and it's all these tools that we're just pulling the information out of it to display it in their own. And I know of a few tools that were doing it, but there were a bunch more I didn't know about. And so with Artifact Hub, there's more fine-grained API control, but those tools can still do that. And there's a handful of tools that are already working against its API to query it and to go for the public information. So I think it would be pretty cool to add that capability into Helm, like Helm plugin search, and have it search Artifact Hub.
Sounds like a really useful idea.
Yeah.
Should there be an issue maybe, or I'm not looking to give people work, but for traceability or to not forget or to motivate somebody, maybe a contribution?
I think since it was Butcher's idea, he should file the issue.
We would probably just do it as a feature hip.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have any updates on at the end of the year, we redirected a bunch of stuff from its previous hosting location in a Google bucket to its new location in the GitHub bucket. Do we have any steps left on that, or is it at this point, are we just kind of waiting? Is there anything we have to get back? Okay.
I think everything's just done.
I have not heard from GitHub at all, which indicates that everything is going great. So
Right. Anybody else? Or same people again? Any other topics?
Oh,
8 minutes.
if any of you would like to sing some sea shanties, I was thinking that our KubeCon submission could be a very nice nested TikTok style sea shanty, singing all about being at the helm. So if any of you are creative like that, I think that could be great. I like how Farina turns his video off. He's like Homer Simpson going into bushes.
I thought he was going to come back with a captain's hat or something.
No, I was doing the Homer Simpson into the bushes.
Eye patch.
Sea shanty about the development of Helm 4.
Ooh.
Well, I'll ask. Actually, now you mentioned Helm 4. Not ideas, plans when that would start being discussed, or we mentioned it before. I'm not even sure there's a lot of stuff on the backlog for it.
It's like Mark and I are the same person, because I just had that exact same thought.
Did you say Helm 4 or?
I said a sea shanty about the development of Helm 4, but I was thinking in the back of my head.
But see, you were trying to get somebody to. It's very smart.
So I'll ask this, since we're here and we still have 6 minutes, so we can add things to Helm v3 that are backwards compatible, right? So that means we're talking breaking compatibility. What is it that you all see right now that would be worth starting with a breaking compatibility change, which is what we need for Helm v4?
Date formatting that everyone keeps complaining about, which I think we already have several issues open on.
Storage.
What do you mean storage?
We discovered it's really easy to break a Kubernetes cluster by installing Helm charts. If they're big enough, they create these big secrets, and then of course when you go to list anything, it pulls all the secrets and will bring your API servers to its knees.
So right now we have the storage API and we have a Postgres backend, for example.
Right.
So the question is what would we do different in Helm 4 to fix storage? Not just that we need to make storage better for these large cases, but we actually need a specific implementation. So I would actually suggest we try to use the storage API to come up with a different implementation that could be opted in Helm v3, maybe even experimentally tested in Helm v3. And then when that's ready to go, that would be a great thing to make the default in Helm v4. But I think we need a proposal for a different path to go before we can start on that. And I haven't heard anybody come up with one yet.
there is a database one. Is there a reason we wouldn't use that one?
By default?
Well, I don't know about by default. There are no criterion for what would make it the default, but we do have at least one live option that's in there.
Yeah, it requires you to have a database set up somewhere that you're working against, though.
Yeah, the problem with storage is you have to have storage before you can store stuff there.
Yeah.
Yes. What
wonderful
might be,
business idea.
yeah, what might be interesting is, and these would, again, things we could probably do in Helm v3, even to start with the storage problem, is one, have a tool that migrates you from secrets to Postgres. So you can do that migration. And then the other thing is right now you have to pass it in as an environmental variable on which, what your storage is. We've long talked about a Helm configuration option, like in git config set. You could probably say Helm config set for a particular context and say, hey, for this context, use this storage option. And so that could be stored in your config path or something like that. So you don't always have to export the environment variable. And you say, okay, when I'm talking this cluster, use the Postgres endpoint. So then you've solved it for your general everyday use, and you've created a migration. And so when you get to those big clusters, we can probably do something like that more easily in just that experience. If somebody wants to contribute that.
Something else that could be done that would solve or would help mitigate the problem with trying to read all the secrets. One of the reasons you read all of them is to get the metadata. You don't necessarily need all the rest of the data that's in those objects.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So what is the storage about? Like I'm not very acquainted with that part, what we are storing. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? If you can give me that in 2 seconds.
So the release storage object, which includes the metadata of whether it was deployed, deploying, rollback, all the different types of states that a Helm release can be in, as well as the entire contents of the template.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. It's sort of related to that, conceptually at least. One of the long-standing limitations has been if you're submitting, if you're installing a Helm chart and it has nested charts and they have nested charts, there's it's a 1 meg request limit for things going into Kubernetes. I don't know if that's something that there's even a way to work around in Helm, or if that would require changes to Kubernetes that would mean that then that could go into Helm v3. But I think that may be one of the things that I've seen people run up against, and it's just kind of cotton.
It's actually an etcd problem.
Yeah, that's a deep problem, but it may be something that's worth, if we're having a conversation about Helm 4.
Yeah.
Isn't it a Raft consensus problem?
Is that what it is? It's that Raft can't handle data bigger than...
There's something in it's either in Raft or an etcd somewhere in there.
It's an etcd like size limit.
Yeah.
I have another question. Like, did we consider to store this data behind an API, an aggregated API server, instead of rely on etcd for that?
So here's one of our things, right? And this is one of those things that I learned when we were developing Helm 3. When we first started developing Helm 3, we talked about using CRDs or another storage mechanism that you could extend Kubernetes with. But we found that there's a bunch of end users who they're not admins. They don't have access to do that, right? There's lots of people who install stuff into clusters that say, hey, I've got my namespace. I can install something into there, but I can't extend the API. I'm not an operator. I'm just somebody wants to install an application. And so we limited our scope for things to Helm by default that could just install in a way where you don't have to have admin access to a cluster. And that gave us a lot more potential Helm users out there.
Does the SQL database backend also solve this issue?
With the SQL backend, I mean, you can scale up like Postgres does. So it's not quite as big of a deal. You just have to have a Postgres instance running that you can point it at.
I have, so a while ago, I started playing with a project with a colleague of as Red Hat, where we started storing Helm charts in Git repositories, right, as in the runtime. So basically, we created a server, like it would be a Helm chart museum replacement, but backed by Git as a database instead of a file system. I imagine that this could be sort of done similarly, right? In the sense that probably you don't need a database to store this sort of things, as long as you can store this data in some sort of database. And did you have any chance of thinking on using Git for that?
I'm just, before you speak, Matt, we reached time, so this is an interesting topic. Maybe we should also put it in for next week, since recently we haven't had that many topics. So that's when we can continue, and then maybe quickly, Matt, if you want to say something.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly. A lot of times folks will want to pass secret information around in their chart or pass in passwords and other sensitive information. And so one of the things you get with secrets is you can store it encrypted using KMS and things like that that are already built into Kubernetes. And so people are using that. So you want to handle that sensitive information store really well. And if you just push it up to Git, you'll probably end up running into trouble with that. And so you got to be sensitive to those situations as well. That's also something that couldn't be the default situation, because just your average person showing up who doesn't know much, wanting to install their first WordPress chart to take something for a spin, having to tell them you got to have Git access and a Git thing and configure all that. That's a lot of extra steps, which makes it harder for somebody who just says, I want to run my package. And so we're probably not going to have that as the default. But it's something that could be opted into as extra. But then there's the security implications and things like that that you have to deal
Definitely something that would be worth a discussion, either in a call or in an issue, or even in a HIP if there's concrete ideas. So yeah, we didn't have a lot of topics, but we lasted a good time. We had a good discussion. Thank you everyone for showing up, and we'll see you again in about exactly a week, I hope. Take care of yourselves, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Bridget, don't forget to stop the recording, please. Thank you. Bye, everybody.